Morning, everybody. Welcome to Wise Word Podcast. Today we have a live presentation from my buddy Chad here, and we're going to be going over some of the yucca plant today and all the stuff you can do for it. Chad, you got a uh, good class ready for today?
I'm ready. We're going to have a lot of examples of what we can do with yucca, the many uses, food, of course, cordage, even fishing, clothing, all kinds of things you can use this one plant for. And some people call it the hardware store, the general store of the woods. So we're going to use it.
All right. Well, thank you, Chad. We'll get into it.
All righty, guys. So we're going to learn about the yucca plant today. And I'll be looking back over here and to here both ways because I got a live for you guys and recorded for the camera here. But we're going to cover quite a few things, but we're going to cover it quickly. It's not going to be long and drawn out. And as we learn about the yucca, we're going to see all the cool uses that we got for it and things that we can be doing. I'm going to set me some notes up here. That'll work. There's a little podium there. You can put my notes up here there so I can keep up with what's going on here. But the yucca plant, here's an example of that there. The yucca plant is from the family Asparagaceae. Okay, it is a perennial shrub and tree. Depending on where you live, you know, they can get quite large. If you're out west in an arid region, they're really large. You can get almost tree trunks on them. Pretty cool stuff. There's 40 to 50 species of them, so there's a bunch. This is what we have around here in East Tennessee, mostly. They're cold hardy, I guess, and they can survive the winters and stuff like that pretty good. There's a lot of varieties. Some are pretty crazy looking, really spiky, really big, have needles on the end, a lot of cool stuff like that. Like I say, they're native to hot and dry, arid parts of the country, the Americas and the Caribbean. But they've taken well to growing in a wide variety of climates where they're introduced, like here in East Tennessee. These were taken out from near Watauga Lake here in Carter County. Not here in Carter County, we're in Washington County right now, but in Carter County, you'll see these all over the place. A lot of people use them along their driveways, places like that. Somewhere they don't want the dogs or the kids to be playing, they'll make borders out of these things, and they're kind of spiky and pokey. This one poked me earlier, drew blood, so they can be very sharp, but they're a real handy little plant. They're handy for a lot of reasons, and we're going to talk about some of those. Yucca could be used for many things as far as a bushcrafter is concerned, and that's my little forte. I like bushcrafting. I like tinkering with whatever's around me, and that's the whole thing with bushcraft. You go out in the woods, you got a knife, you got a hatchet, just a couple of small things, and you craft from the bush what you need. You know, you're bushcrafting. You go out there, if I need a chair, I'll make a chair out of this, this, or this, and one small piece of rope, you know, whatever it may be. This right here is kind of like the little hardware store, the general store of plants. There's so many uses from this one plant. It's a really good thing to know. So some of the things we can use this for: you can use it for food, you can use it for soap, you can use it for fire starting, you can use it for cordage, and you can even use it for fishing. Okay, and we'll talk about that here a little while later. It's pretty interesting. And but these are all made possible from this one plant, and we're going to break it down and see what we can do with it. Got a disclaimer before we get started. Okay, a lot of people know of the yucca plant, the name yucca. It's Y-U-C-C-A, two C's. Okay, that's pronounced yucca. There's also a yucca plant, Y-U-C-A. That's pronounced yucca. That is cassava. If you've heard of cassava, a lot of ethnic foods are made from cassava flour, things like that. Its root, it's almost looks kind of like a sweet potato almost. It's a big, fat, hearty root. And it can be ground into powder and used for all kinds of stuff. They even make cassava chips, things like that out of them, stuff like that. But they are two different plants, not to be confused. You do not want to eat the root of this plant and try to make flour from it, because it's going to give you a bellyache. It's not going to work out for you, okay? So two totally different plants. The cassava or the yucca is not the same as the yucca, all right? Don't confuse them. So break it down. What are some uses that this plant makes available for us? Number one is food. The yucca has several edible components, all right? Now, we're kind of at a disadvantage right now because it is the end of winter here. You know, spring won't be far around the corner, but of course these are not blooming yet. So one of the things that you can get that are edible, the main edible part of this plant is the flowers. They have a white, pretty flower that blooms. These are the stalks right here, and they are huge. They get huge from the ground up. You can get up to one, and they're probably this tall, some taller than that. Have these huge stalks come out of them, and everywhere you see these pods, those were flower clusters at one point. Okay, big white flowers, so you can pull the petals off those flowers. You can eat them raw. Some people's tummy won't tolerate that, but they're better if they're boiled or roasted. Something like that, you can make like a little, kind of like you would caramelize onions. You cook them till they're almost translucent. You can do that with the petals there. You can roast them, do different things like that, and they are edible and tasty little things there. All right. The fruit can also be eaten. It can be eaten raw or cooked. This is, let me see if I can pop a pod off here. Okay, now these are, there's seeds falling everywhere. All right, so this is a pod. Now when this is fresh, that is green. It's about the same color green. It's a little bit lighter green actually, but it's a pretty interesting little pod, and it's a fruit, okay? It is the fruit of this plant. It can be eaten raw. It can be roasted over a fire. It can be put in an oven and roasted, anything like that. Has its own little interesting flavor, but they're not bad. And inside these, as I made a mess here, you have all these little black seeds. I don't know if Jimmy can zoom in on that or not. These little black seeds right here, they're also edible too. So you can take the seeds, they can be eaten, the way they are. They can be dried, they can be ground up and made into like a meal, if you wanted to cook something in the meal, or they could be cooked into soups and things like that. And it has almost like a properties of barley or something. It's a very thin seed. You can cook it up like barley in a soup, so different things like that. So there's lots of different parts on this that can be eaten. And even the young stalks of the flowers, like right here's where the stalk would come up when it's young and tender, as it's coming out of the plant, that's edible too. So lots of good stuff there. The root's not really palatable. It's hard to digest, so not an advisable thing to eat. You probably find something better to eat before you depend on that. But it is used in some medicines. Some people use yucca, but they grind it, they dry it, grind it, and put it into a little capsule. So you can eat it that way, and then you don't have to go through the digestion as much there, trying to work through that. It's also used a lot in different toiletry items, lotions, things like that, have yucca. So good stuff there. But as far as food goes, a lot of different edible parts on there, and different ways to eat them. You got your pod, you got your flowers, you got your seeds, you got your stalks, all edible. So pretty good little survival food, I guess. I don't know if I'd want to make several meals out of it, but if you had to make it through an unexpected night out in the woods, that'd be an option there. All right, another thing we could do here is soap. We can make soap out of this, and I meant to, maybe I could recruit John. John, would you like to get me a little cup of water here? The root and leaves can both be used as soap. This is really cool, okay? This is also, when I was talking about the beauty care products there, the yucca, the saponins, and different things like that in there are used in beauty care products. You crush the root and you use it while washing up. We'll get Big John there, so I'm going to grab us some. I'm going to take out a knife here. I'm going to cut me a chunk of this root off. All right. So you can see this is pretty white flesh in there. Pretty good stuff. Very fibrous around there. Cool, thank you very much. All right, so you can take this and you can kind of rough it up, grind it up, whatever you want to do. Kind of smells like a raw potato. We don't have smell-o-vision. I'll let you smell that, but it smells like a raw potato. But you can get that wet, get it in water, and as you work it up, of course, one end of that's dirty, so I'm getting dirtier than cleaner, but you can actually work that up into a lather, okay? Pretty cool stuff there. The main thing you want to do with that is crush it up first. So if you're in the woods, you got a rock, just pound it up until you got a little mash. Take that, scrub up with it. As we work with these leaves here in a little while, you're also going to find out that these leaves have a lot of saponins in them too. You can scrape this up, take the little flesh of that, get a little wet, and you can even feel the smoothness of it there. Pretty neat stuff there. But the property that's in that are called saponins. So if you've done any soap making, you learn that as you're adding the lye to your fats, like that, if you're using beef fat or anything like that to make lye soap, the process of making that soap is called saponification. And that's where you're working with the saponins in a plant or animal fat, something like that. Pretty neat stuff there. So it could be making soap and clean up. A lot of Indian tribes use this. We talk about how how pretty Indian maidens' hairs are. You know, they have the long, pretty black hair, and it's always shiny and pretty. You see them in movies. This is one of their secrets, is using yucca. They use that as their shampoo. A lot of them will grind that up and use that, and it's really, really good on their hair. Good stuff. All right, so next thing, what we got? We got food, we got soap. Let's do fire starting. So this is where the yucca is prized as a tool to get an ember fast. The wood of the yucca stalk, we're looking here, let me get one of these smaller ones here. Snap that off here. There we go. So this is the wood of the yucca stalk right here. All right, it has one of the lowest kindling points of any type of wood, which basically means it will ignite quickly. It doesn't take a lot of heat for this to become an ember. It dries very hard. You know, when it's fresh, it's of course fleshy and juicy, but when they're dry like this right here, great stuff, great kindling. You can find them pretty straight. You can see these larger ones are really straight. You use them for a hand drill. You could use it as a bow drill. I do have a bow drill here. You know, do what you need to do there. But you can also use this, the fatter stalks, as your hearth board. So this could be your spindle for your bow drill. You can take a larger stalk like this right here, take your knife, split it. You've got a flat side, got a notch, you've got a hearth board and a spindle out of the same plant. Okay, so pretty cool stuff there. The dry leaves make excellent tinder. Okay, so if we look at this old raggedy plant here, a couple of these plants, you can see these fibers here. All right, as that's died, it is really just broken up and woolly looking. There's not a whole lot to it there. And as we process these plants down here a little while, you'll see these fibers here are what we're going to go after, because we're going to make some rope out of it. But when you find an old dead plant, this one right here is pretty rough. You can take all these dead leaves and just pound them up between two rocks, and buddy, you'll have a bird's nest of a little fine fiber that'll take a spark real quickly and can get you a fire going pretty quick. So we talked about the dry stalk. It could be the spindle and the hearth board both. If you get one that's crooked, you know, some of these don't grow very straight, you can actually use that as your bow too, for your bow drill, or just find another piece of wood if you need something. But it can be used for the bow too, so you can do a whole fire drill set or bow drill set just from one plant. And pretty good stuff there. So let's see. If you're using a bow drill, okay, let's think about this. If you're using a bow drill and you don't have any rope or shoestrings or cordage with you, you know, a lot of people carry, I've got different little hanks of cord and stuff over here. Normally, you can reach in my coat pocket, pull a little piece of string out, anything. Shoestrings, if you got them, you know, there's all kinds of options for rope. But if you don't have anything, okay, you can also braid this into cordage and use that for the cord for your bow drill. So instead of having a cord like that, you can have a cord made from yucca. You can have the spindle made from yucca. You can have the hearth board made from yucca. The entire set can be made from one plant, which is pretty cool. Also, if you're not able to find a straight enough stalk to make your spindle, you know, if you can find another hardwood or something like that, you can cut a divot in that and just use a small piece of this as a what's the word I'm looking for there? Not a plug, but a socket. You put that in the socket, and this will be what contacts the hearth board and helps make your fire. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be all one piece. You can use another stick, make a little divot in there, and attach that to it as a socket. So you have a host spindle and then a socket go together. Pretty neat stuff there. So talking about the cordage, that's going to lead us into the next thing there. Not only do you have food, soap, and fire starting, but you also have your cordage. Okay, cordage can be used as part of fire starting, but cordage is something that if you study your 5 C's for outdoor, things that you need to have out there, you got cordage, you got combustion, you got a container, you got coverage, and you got a cutting tool. You know, that's one of your 5 C's is cordage, something you should have with you or close to you in your pack, something like that at all times. You can take these leaves, okay, the green leaves of this, and process them down to expose the fibers in there. And you saw I just scraped that just a little bit with my knife just to get a little flesh, but you can see in there that there's little fibers in there. Almost looks like the fibers on a violin string or something like that, you know, like a violin bow. Pretty neat stuff there. Doesn't take much at all to scrape this thin flesh off of here and expose all of these fibers from the inside. Again, these are the fibers you're looking at here. When this is dry, the flesh is rotted away, and all that's left are these strong fibers. And they're very strong when they're fresh. When they're dry, they're good for tinder. All right, but when they're fresh, you can make a rope that's very strong. We're going to try to make enough rope to pick up this 30-pound weight, and we're going to see who can do that. All right, and I think we'll be able to achieve that pretty easily. So, different ways you can do that. You can twist or braid the whole unprocessed leaves. Some people will take a whole leaf and just twist it like this. They're breaking it down, they twist it, and you've got rope. Okay, you can do that. That's actually really strong, surprisingly very strong. Okay, you can take multiple leaves together, okay, and braid them. Anybody here got a sister or daughters? You got Steve's like, I got daughters. You've done some braiding. It don't take long to learn how to braid.
Okay.
Yeah. You braid or plait, depending on how old school you are there. My mom would say plait in her hair, but you can braid stuff together there, and once it's braided, you've got a really, really strong, cord there. But my favorite way, the way I prefer, is to use the processed down fibers and braid. You can braid that cordage or do what's called a reverse wrap. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We're going to learn both of those techniques today. Using a reverse wrap twist is effective. Creates a strong cordage that can be as long as you want. If you use just a leaf, that's as long as your rope's going to be. That's it. If you start braiding them together, you can braid them together a little bit and add to it some, and that works pretty good. But when you're doing the reverse wrap twist, you just keep adding small sections at a time. I can make a rope that goes from here to the end of the fellowship hall. It can be 30 foot long, it can be 40 foot long. As long as I got more leaves to process down, I can just keep adding to it. I watched a video recently of a guy that made a section. I think he said it was about 40 or 50 feet long, but he was using it to prepare for an alligator hunt. So he was going to, that's how strong this stuff can be. He was going to rope him an alligator. So pretty cool stuff. All right, so we'll be doing more with the cordage here in a minute, but I'm going to touch on a couple of last things here of what can be done with the yucca. Okay, fishing. All right, so this is a little more controversial and quite possibly illegal in most places. All right, but if you were to take the root, like, I'll just cut off a chunk there. You take a larger chunk, crush it down, take your little rock, just pulverize it until you got you a big old plump of mash there, just some nastiness there. You can take the juice from that and that crushed yucca, and it will stun a fish. And too much of it could kill the fish, but that could be used to stun fish. So if you have, say, a pond, or a slow pool on a little creek, something like that, where you can see fish, but you can't get to them. You don't know what to do. The root can be crushed. That juice and pulp can be put down into the water, and it will stun the fish. If it's in a good enough concentration, they'll float to the top. You collect your fish and eat them. Some native tribes and stuff have done that in the past, but that's not something that I recommend. I'm going to go ahead and throw that disclaimer out there, because fishing with poison is illegal in almost all places, especially in Tennessee. So don't do that. But we were going to have a fish, and we were going to go proof of concept there, and my wife ixnayed that because she thought it was cruel for me to go to the pet store and get a goldfish just to stun him, and then if he lived, I was going to have to take care of him. So we didn't want another pet. So no fish today. We're not going to stun any fish. But you can crush that, use the pulp, and there's chemicals in that will stun the fish and bring it to the surface. So pretty neat stuff there. So another way to use yucca to
Fish in his office?
yeah, there we go. Yeah, we get the fish out of there. Another way to use yucca to fish with is to make your fishing line out of it. Okay, you saw there that you've got little tiny fibers in this. Depending on how thick you braid them, you can make your rope that big around, or you can make you something just a small thin rope. Either way, it's pretty strong stuff. Okay, a big fish, a 2-pound fish is a pretty good sized fish. Okay, we're going to make a rope that'll hold this 30-pound weight. So it's very strong fibers. It can be used for fishing. Really neat thing you can do with some of these varieties. I said there's 40 to 50 varieties or species. Some are there's one called Adam's Needle. These have pretty sharp tips, especially as they dry. Like these are getting old. They'll draw blood. Some of them have a needle on the end, very hard. I won't say bony feeling, but a very hard outer core on it, and that can be used to make a gorge hook. So you can you know, carve a little groove in that, tie your line onto it, put your bait on there, and then as a fish swallows that, a gorge hook is basically, it doesn't have a hook, it's just a straight piece of material, bone, thorns, anything like that that has points on both ends. Slide your bait over it. When the fish swallows the bait, you pull, it turns sideways, wedges in their throat, their gullet, wherever it may be, you know, get down, and that's how you bring them in. Now, you can't go fighting a fish with one of them and go, you got to bring them in real easy and just barely bring them in, but you can get you a fish in with a gorge hook. People have done it for thousands of years. And again, with the whole plant, if you've got one that has the sharp tips, you can do a whole fishing rig out of one plant. You got your pole, you got your line, and if you had the tip of a particular species, you can have a hook too. So pretty good stuff there. All right, and the last thing I'm going to add here, using them for clothing, okay? This right here, just like if you go to any tropical vacation, you walk into little souvenir shops, they got hats and fans and stuff like that made out of palm leaves and things like that woven. You can take this right here and weave it in any number of different applications there. You can make mats for it, you know, for sleeping. You can, you know, you can do whatever you want, depending. You're only limited by how much you have. So you can watch videos of people making sandals out of these, different ways to weave them in. You can split them down into thinner and thinner, you know, strips like this and do some really intricate basket weaving. Anything you want to do with a yucca plant, it's just about possible. It's a really amazing plant. But breaking it down to the fibers can be processed and spun just like you would spin wool out onto a spindle and do that, and then stitch and do different things. So a lot of Native American tribes have used that to make their clothes with too. So pretty cool stuff there. Last thing on the clothing, not only can you use it for the material itself as far as weaving, making hats, fans, whatever you want to make out of it, mats, but you can also use it for the sewing. So again, if you have one of the varieties such as Adam's needle that has the really sharp tip on it, you can process this down, say from about here down, process all that into just the fibers. You leave the needle tip on there, okay, and you can either leave it as loose fibers and sew with it, or you can braid that, tie a knot in the end of it, and you can use that for doing a heavier application such as like a birch bark container or something like that, where you're just taking bark, you fold it over, make holes, you need something to stitch it up with. You can use that right there to stitch it up, and if you do have the stronger varieties, you have the needle built in, okay? In this class ourselves, we actually got a sewing kit there. How many months ago? It's a couple of months back we did that. We had the sewing kit, very small, you know, it doesn't take up much room, but you throw that in your pack. You can do repairs on the go. So with all that said, that's some of the many applications of the yucca plant. And I hope you guys can dig into this more yourself and experience it. As the spring comes along, I'll, I don't know, see, maybe about May or June, somewhere around there, hopefully we'll have some flowers, and then later some of the fruits, and I'll bring those in on some of our later sessions, and we'll try those. If anybody's curious about eating those, but of course they're not in season right now. We'll eat the flowers when they come along, and then afterwards the fruits will come along. We'll try to roast some of those and see what we got. During the summer we'll be at the park where we have fires and all that fun stuff to play with, so we'll do that too. But that's all I got. You guys got any questions on this? Alrighty. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you guys how to process this down. Some of y'all saw the stash of spoons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to grab us 5 spoons here, and this is what we're going to use to process down our yucca leaves. All right. Let me pop that off. And pop that off. I'm going to cut myself on camera. That'd be bad, wouldn't it? Alrighty. So you saw me at first take my knife and scrape that down. That worked pretty good, but you can really get into the strength of the fiber because you're shaving it down with a sharp knife. But with a spoon, okay, with a spoon you can take this and just scrape her down like that. Look at that. Took the flesh right off. Flip it over, do the other side. Takes next to no effort at all. And look at these fibers, okay? Within that little bundle right there, there's probably about 40 fibers in there, okay? we'll strip these down. You only need to do one leaf to kind of get the hang of what we're doing. You're welcome to all you want. If you want to make a 30-foot rope, have at it. We got plenty here. But I'm going to hand out spoons. We're going to work on that. And then maybe after we're done, we can get back to this and show the camera our end result on some of these. So I'm going to wrap up this portion, and then we're going to spread out some newspapers and start making a mess. All right? And there's Spider. Crawling out there. All right, so what I'm doing right here is I'm separating these fibers after we have scraped the thin flesh off of the leaf. Just use a spoon. Scrape it off both sides. And you end up with these fibers. So as you separate them, you get you a pretty good little pile of thread to work with, and then we're going to learn here in a few minutes how to reverse wrap, twist, and make us a strong cordage. Okay, so what we have here now are some fibers that are processed down. The flesh has been scraped off. I just did part of a leaf, chopped it off, and we have this. So to begin with, we'll just take us a little small hank, about that big, twist it one way, one the other, and it'll give you a little loop, a little twist there, boom. So I've got me a loop to start with, all right? So with that loop, separate the two sides, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to twist away from me with the top one and roll it towards me, and that brings the bottom one to the top. And you twist away and then roll it towards you. Twist away and roll it towards you. Now why this is called a reverse wrap is because it's getting two separate tensions on this. One's rolling away, one's rolling towards you, so that keeps your cord from unrolling or unraveling. So away and back. Twist away and back. Alrighty. Twist away and then roll it back. Twist away and roll it back. Way back. It doesn't take long to get a rhythm going. Way and back. Way and back. So before you know it, you start having something that looks like this, and you can tell it's not unraveling. Okay, now it's not too thick. I could use that for fishing or anything like that, but you'd be surprised at what you could tie together with something that small. So I'm going to work this down a little bit, and when I start getting closer to the end, I'm going to show you how to add to it to continue making this longer. Alrighty, so now I have got my cord braided down to where I still have just a couple of inches hanging off here. I've got them at different lengths for a reason. Okay, I'm going to take me another little hank, and I'm going to not go half and half. I'm going to go like that. Leave me one tail longer than the other. Okay, I'm going to take my longer tail, attach it to the shorter one on this one. I'm just going to tuck that in. That's where the bend is. Tuck it in right there, and just continue to twist and bring it towards me. Twist it, bring it towards me. Twist it, bring it towards me. Okay, so as we do this, we're connecting the two, and because they're of varying lengths, they are really overlapping quite a bit. The tensile strength doesn't get changed any. You don't have a weak spot where a connection is. It just keeps on going and going and going, and you can continue that process until you run out of fiber or run out of the will to keep doing it. So whatever runs out first. If your fingers cramp up, take a break. And as you can see, there's no way you can even tell where that was added in, and it's very, very strong. There we go. Alrighty, so what we have here is a 30-pound weight, and then we've got this thin, I made it intentionally thin, little reverse wrap Yucca cordage. So we'll run it through the D-ring and see what we got here. 30 pounds. Let's see if I can get that without cutting my fingers off. Oh, there we go. Alrighty, guys. So appreciate you hanging out with us while we did a little of exploring of the yucca plant. We made our rope. Of course, we showed the strength of that, picking up a 30-pound weight. In the meantime, while everybody else was playing, I wove a mat out of some yucca. It's actually pretty good and padded, thick. Just proof of concept. You can weave anything, make whatever you like. You can make hats, fans, anything you needed to do. It's a very versatile plant, and I hope you look into it, find out more about it, and you'll keep an eye open for it. Once you see it and learn where it's growing, you'll never forget where it's at, and you'll have a resource at your hands. So thanks for tagging along with us, and hope you all have a good day.